today's a big day. This is the at least initial launch of 3P Champions. So for everybody listening, and we hope there are a lot of you, Greg and I go back a long way. Oh, I'm Rob, by the way.
And I'm Greg.
And that's Greg, Stern and Stoller. We go back a long way, and it's a pretty interesting story. And to me, it's kind of one of those stories of life that you meet people along the way, and some of them stick, and some of them you just have a cup of coffee with, and you don't hear from them again, or they introduce you to other people. But this has lasted, stood the test of time, and we're still just at the tip of the iceberg. So, Greg, why don't you tell everybody how this got started, and then we'll get into the 3P champions, why we're doing it, why we think people are going to enjoy it, why we think it's important, and why passion, purpose, and principle are meaningful.
Well, yeah, Rob, it's hard to think it's already 2000, almost 23. But I think it was 2011, 2012. I had been doing some research about films and documentaries and didn't know much about it because I had talked to a couple guys over here and they had opened up some of their scripts they had written in books and said, why don't you take a look at this and let me know what you think. And one of them was one of our 3P guy, Bill Kruger's friend. He wrote this story about autism and it was so kind of prevalent at the time. But when I read it, I was like, wow, that was phenomenal. So I said, well, let me look into this. What if you could make that into a movie? So I'm just kind of doing my research and I was looking on LinkedIn and I saw your profile and it had some stuff about film under it. And so I'm like, well, heck, this guy looks pretty cool. I'll just send him a message. So I sent you a message, went on LinkedIn and kind of let it hang out there. And then I don't know how much later it was, but I remember I had a meeting downtown Seattle. I just pulled into a parking spot and I think you were calling in from, I think, Philadelphia. And I'm like, oh, okay, I got to take this call. I got 10 minutes for my meeting. Well, I can fit it in real quick. And so I picked up the call and I don't know what to say. It was kind of like a blip. I missed my meeting. I think our call was somewhere between an hour and a half, 2 hours. We talked about life, kids, values, character, coaching, and we just hit it off. So that's how the relationship all started. And from that point, it was just a buzz. So interestingly enough, I think we talked for a year or two, and then we kind of broke off with life. And then bringing it back together, I think right before COVID, we reached out to each other again. It was that same kind of buzz. We talked, and it was like we had missed a beat, and we were talking forever. And some of those same topics, our kids, coaching, leadership, mentorship. And I think we just kind of got deep into that talk about how, kids, people need more leaders, more mentors. And we just started discussing it. And from that initial call, the second time around, we kind of delved into this path of a new journey and eventually came up with the 3Ps, passion, purpose, and principle, because we realized those 3Ps were important in our life and others' lives. And I guess, Rob, that's kind of how it all started.
I don't know that we ever had a 10-minute phone conversation. It takes us that long to find out how we're both doing. But when I tell people the story, I kind of, I tell them about when we got in touch through LinkedIn. It's still the only like successful relationship I've garnered through LinkedIn. But I kind of tell people that like we fell in love over the phone. I saw this guy. For those of you who don't know yet, Greg Stern was a D1 basketball player. He's a stud. I played a little bit with him, enough to know that he can kick my ass. And I'm not bad, but I ain't him. But we did share and do share a lot of values. He's had coaches. He's had some incredible coaches. And just as a quick background on Greg, he was a little kid with mad skills, and he ended up coming under the tutelage of John Stockton.
Mr. Assist.
Took Greg under his wings in basketball camp in 7th grade, I think, and provided belief. Told Greg, you have what it takes. You're going to have to work hard, maybe even harder than the other kids, because, they're not gonna look at you and say, oh, this kid's great. But he let them believe and let them know he is great, and he became great. And that, I know, was an important influence on Greg's life. And I was very fortunate to have people who also encouraged me to, do whatever I wanted. I played a lot of tennis, played everything, baseball, played in college, had a great high school baseball coach who unfortunately passed recently. And you can't imagine the tributes that came out about Herb Sonderecker, my baseball coach, and the impact he had on so many lives. I went on to coach high school baseball, and he was my role model. People went on to teach, he was their role model. So coaches have played a very significant role in Greg and my lives, and we both understand the importance of great coaching and the importance of bad coaching. Coaches have an impact on kids, and we understand that it's a critical position for someone to take. And in some cases, unfortunately, people aren't qualified, but they raise their hand to volunteer and they become a coach. The thing that sort of solidified us was Greg told me he was going out to Vegas after we'd, been in touch. And I was like, yeah, what are you doing? What are you doing there? He was going to meet with Dale Brown. I was like, Dale Brown, the LSU basketball coach? Yeah. I was like, well, that's cool. So I actually went out to Vegas, rendezvoused with Greg. We spent a couple of hours just doing what we're doing now. But to put a face in front of the name and make it more real was really important for me. And then Greg met with Dale Brown, and I headed back to Philly, and the story continued after that. But then pick up where we with our conversation with Coach Brown.
Well, first of all, I got that memory is so funny because you talk about speed dating and
Yeah.
talk about a commitment. But I flew from Washington State to Vegas to meet Dale Brown, and in a conversation, I'm coming too. You flew out from Philadelphia. We were there for probably 3 hours
Tops.
before my meeting with Dale Brown. I think we ate at some restaurant and talked. But to take that journey on a whim without knowing the other person after maybe 1-2 conversations, that meant a lot. And to see you face to face and realize, man, that's the same guy who was on the phone.
Exactly.
I thought that was amazing. That's when you felt like this is real, man.
Yeah. Well, that was the same with me. It was a whim, but not completely. I believe after like meaningful conversations about stuff that's important to me and important to you, I would have been very, very surprised had we met each other and been like, wow, this ain't the guy I've been talking to.
True.
So it was so natural and real that, I felt great about it.
Who knows?
So,
if we never rendezvoused in Vegas, we wouldn't be talking today.
Probably not. Probably not. So yeah, I mean, I guess there's a lesson in there. If you need to,
took a
if you
chance and
need to take a little leap, take a leap.
Yeah.
The worst that could have happened was it was a, sort of wasted trip to Vegas. I didn't even gamble. I just met Greg, hung out, went back. But it was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And it was even a lesson to me at that stage. If you think it's a good idea, it is a good idea. Do it.
Yeah, man. Well, again, so we talk about mentors and coaches and the positive impacts. And at that time, John Stockton was always kind of my guy. One, he was a little guy, gave me a little hope, a little vision of what I could be, even being a little guy. His character, but beyond John was another John that I loved and admired from a distance, was John Wooden. And John Wooden was the cream of the crop for me. One, as a winner, as a coach, but just being the human he was and how much he had given back to people and people loved him and values and character. So with John Wooden, I had a friend that I used to work with, and he played at LSU for Coach Dale Brown. And in my conversation with him about John Wooden, he goes, our coach is just like John Wooden. Matter of fact, he's good friends with him and looks up to him. And so I'm like, I want to talk to you. So he was telling me about Dale Brown and some of his positive speeches he had and his energy. And I'm like, well, I got to look this guy up. So I did, found him. And then after I realized he loved John Wooden, they were like best friends and he learned so much from John Wooden. I said, I got to meet this guy. So I started reaching out through all my contacts and finally got a hold of him. And after, I don't know how long it took, he says, hey, Greg, if you want to meet me, come on down. I'm speaking to a large company in Las Vegas. I'll be there, have like this time slot. And I'm like, crud, I can go to Vegas for this. And I'm going. So I got the ticket. I met you. I met Dale Brown. He was amazing. He just had this energy. Just you could tell he was just this great human being, a winner. He talked about character and leadership, and he had stories, and he rose the level and kind of inspired me. And I just thought, man, we hung up we closed the door. He went on to his speech. I flew home, and that's kind of how it all started. Here's the funny thing about our three Ps, though. Come full circle. It was what 7, 8 years later, right? When we started talking again.
Yeah.
And so that was 2012. I met you in Vegas. I met Coach Dale Brown. And as we started talking about this event, we didn't even name it the three Ps yet, if I remember correctly.
No.
We started having these conversations about mentorship and leadership and impact and, futures for children, and they need direction. And so I reached out to Coach Dale Brown again for a number of months through email. And he'd been sending me information and inspiring me. And he was that same guy. And so I think when we had our conversation, we got to do something about it. It'd be great to find a way to impact kids. And I remember thinking, we should interview Coach Dale Brown. I'll call Coach and see if he'll let us talk to him. Just kind of see what he has to give. He's amazing, right? And that's what happened. I think I called him or reached out to him and said, hey, my partner Rob, he's with Art in Motion. He's a great guy. He's in coaching. We want to talk to you and learn some things from you. And I think I asked him, can we do a Zoom call? And he said, oh, I don't do Zoom calls. I don't do video. I'm like, okay. But what we did is actually set up a Zoom call, but he only did the audio part of it. That's how we started the whole first step. And then that call was unfreaking believable.
Mm.
Do you remember that? It was like, from the time we started to the time God, it was just this energy. It was a passion, and this guy took over.
I was in my car. And typically I'm just talking on my car as I'm driving, but for this, I pulled over in like Northeast Philly, pulled over and just got on the phone, and I will never, ever forget it. I mean, it was kind of hard to believe that Dale Brown was on the phone. And I always really had a thing for Dale Brown. I just always liked him for no reason at all, except he was a high-profile coach, so I'd watched a lot of his games. He coached Shaquille O'Neal, so they were on TV a lot, and I just dug the guy's persona. And the thing about the conversation with Dale Brown, which is typical of all the conversations we've had with the 3P champions, is that I don't even think we talked one little bit about basketball. Mm-hmm. And by the end of the conversation, it was clear to me and amazing to me that, in a Hall of Fame coaching life, it seemed that basketball was, no disrespect to the sport, but kind of the least significant thing in Dale Brown's life. Yeah. And I realized after speaking with him that he was incredibly literate, just like John Wooden, and had poetry at the tip of his tongue and could quote people at the drop of a hat, and extremely well read and well traveled. He'd been to 90 countries. He'd spent time with Mother Teresa. The Lakota Nation gave him a Lakota name for the work he did with them, because he told us that he was born in Indian country. And the guy just had, I think, the biggest heart I've ever spoken with. And when that call ended, and I don't think either of us wanted it to end ever, but when we hung up and said, thanks, Coach, and Dale Brown was so gracious, he acted like we were doing him a favor, making him feel important. And when he hung up, Greg and I were on the phone and we were both like, oh my God, was that incredible? We were like shadow boxing. I mean, I had to wait before I got on the road. It was an unforgettable experience. And I think the three P's was born out of the way we perceived Dale Brown as a man of
Absolutely.
passion, purpose, and principle. Nothing about his persona that wasn't positive, that wasn't dedicated to the right principles. His purpose was to help anybody in need. And his passion was in service. So we decided that those are the kind of people we wanted to not only associate with, but present to the world and to all the people we know, and ideally all the people they know, because there's a lot of negativity in the world. And we kind of focused on coaching initially, really because of Dale Brown. And Greg's network is pretty enormous in terms of coaching and sports and across the whole spectrum. And I've been around a good bit as well. And we've interviewed about 50 people of passion, purpose, and principle. Not all of them in sports, some of them are in the arts, and we will be presenting those people on 3P Champions because they all have so much to offer. And I would say, similarly to Dale Brown, none of them, I would say, talks about me, me, me. There's almost nothing about me being them in these interviews. It's all about what they can do to help other people. And they're just I think the highest ethical group I've ever encountered. People who are at the top of their game, whatever game they played. We had football players, football coaches, basketball, musicians, people who have worked hard to become excellent and then spend the rest of their life trying to share what they've learned with predominantly young people who need guidance. And that's how this 3P Champions started. And yeah, today's the first time where actually this will be our first podcast when all is said and done. And it's something I think we're both proud to have done. We did these interviews during COVID, and I can't imagine having been more productive or positive during that time.
Rob, we were very fortunate, I think, because of the COVID situation where people were at homes. People had by their computers, we had the access to some of these people wouldn't normally have the time to do. But we spent a lot of time talking to people. I think the viewers and the listeners will appreciate what I appreciate most about a lot of these conversations is they're all amazing people, but they're not just talking about passion, purpose, and principle. They're telling us their life stories and their journeys they've been on.
Yeah.
And that's what's so intriguing. We didn't have any outline of what we were going to do. We just kind of free flowed, brought up a topic, and it went where it went. And, starting with Coach Dale Brown, I remember thinking, I know a lot about Coach Dale Brown, but after that call, I felt like it was part of his life. He told his whole life journey to us in a short amount of time.
He did, which is a remarkable journey.
Amazing journey.
He is the most positive individual I've ever spoken with, and he's 85 at least.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's in his mid to late 80s, and on the phone, he sounds like he's in his low 30s.
Yeah, no, he's still ready to go to work, ready to travel, ready to do anything to help people. And his humanitarian outlook, which I've never, ever been more impressed by anybody in that regard. I think he's the greatest humanitarian I've ever spoken with. And all of this generosity of spirit, everything he's brought to the world was done in spite of the fact that his father left home 2 days before Dale Brown was born, and he never met him. Dale Brown never met his father. And instead of living a life of bitterness and resentment and woe, and he credits his mother with his success in life and his approach to life, but he was just a remarkable role model that we had the pleasure to speak with, and you've met him. So we wanted more. We wanted more of that. And we found, other people. I think because
well, let me list a couple of these people. I won't say their names. I want to tell you their backgrounds because it really is an amazing group. We have people who started foundations that are local and around the world. We got major doctors across the country, lawyers, senior executives, CEOs. We have Hall of Fame musicians, Hall of Fame coaches. We got leadership professors, authors, teachers, motivational speakers, elite athletic trainers like train in the NBA, the Major League Baseball, NFL, hockey, poets, and just a lot of community leaders. But as we talk a lot about all these different people, and they all have different titles and different jobs and careers, but there's common themes to all of these people from different walks of lives.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to that passion, purpose, and principle.
That is the common theme. So I think the people approach life similarly, and it is really about service. I think any of these people will tell you, and you'll hear from them, that that's kind of what's most important to them is service. Other common themes, I think in virtually every single case, these people can tell you a person or people who gave them the belief that John Stockton gave Greg. Somebody who said, I believe in you. You can be great. Even people who nobody else had ever said that before, said that to. Some of these people, I think, were diamonds in the rough, and some of it was very rough. We've had people similar to Dale Brown in that, a number of them grew up in a broken home, in very, very difficult conditions to grow up in. Some people were, misled by people. Some people were used because of their talent. But all of these people, no matter the trials and tribulations, came out of it determined to guide young people and I think protect them from some of the same pitfalls they encountered.
Yeah, man, I can't wait for other people to hear these conversations we have and just to get some feedback from them, because it's one thing to go around and tell people you had these conversations, but there's a few that have had sneak peeks. But when you get the feedback that they felt the same way we did, it means a lot, because you're actually impacting their lives, even though they're seeing someone else. I feel better for having spent a year talking to all these people. I think I even said to you on our conversations beyond our conversations with these people is that, hey, if we died tomorrow, we can really feel good about this last year because we spent way more than a year in 1 year talking to all these people. Went on 100 journeys, it seemed like.
Yeah.
But, I learned a lot from these people. I was inspired. I know that other people hear their stories will be inspired. And I think it was just a great year. And I appreciate being with you, Rob. You're a great interviewer. Every guy or woman I talked to after that we talked to would say, oh, God, that Rob's a great guy. Love that guy.
Same with you. And I think part of what connected Greg and me, I was always interested with Art in Motion. I was always interested in what I called ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And that was my focus. I was so happy to put a spotlight on people who were not accustomed to the spotlight. I had a TV show for a couple of years, and I put people on there that were great, but not household names, none of them. There's something I think, I don't know, in my mind, I felt great about being the messenger. None of the talk was about me, and I don't want it to be about me. It was about people who deserve some notoriety, even though they're not looking for it. I think that's the thing. It's like all these 3P champions, they're brilliant, they're important, they're influential, they're positive, they're making a huge difference, but they're only doing it because they're compelled to. That's what they want to do. I don't think anybody, I'm sure some people we've worked with have done real well, but that was never the motivation. The motivation was impact. These are impact individuals who spend no time talking about how great they are. And I think that attracted Greg and me.
Yeah, I seems to me, Rob, almost every time we had one of these conversations, when we hung up with them and we looked at each other on the screen, we were smiling, pumping our fist. Like, I can't
Every
believe it's
time.
another one, just such a
Like,
special person.
I know, it'd be like, oh my God, how cool is he? How incredible is she? And then the next time we'd go like, oh my God, that was just unbelievable. And it kind of got funny, but I think Greg and I are both pretty enthusiastic guys. But if you're not real, you ain't getting anywhere with either of us. Like, Greg's got that smile on his face pretty much 24/7, but cross the line and that goes away. And it's the same with me. I will go down the line for anybody who's willing to work and serve. But, show me that you're not that real guy and the conversation's going to change. But we didn't have any of that. These people and you start to get cynical at times because there's so much negativity out there and so much infighting between a lot of different groups, and there's conflict. But after having interviewed all these people, you cannot help but realize that there is a lot of good out there.
Well, I
A
think that
lot
was
of
one of our
people.
motivations too, Rob. I remember we discussed that, where are kids getting their information? A lot of it's online, and negative stuff sells more, and they're seeing more negative than positive. That we felt like if this guy was motivating me, inspiring me, and giving me lessons, just imagine if all these young people would hear the same thing. So putting this whole collection together and putting it out there, however we could do that, whether it be internet, it would have a positive, it would have a ripple, and it would affect people. And that's how you start getting contagious. Is these conversations, these inspirational people, they impact people and they spread the word. And so we have a collection of 50 something people. I think if everybody gets a chance to hear, are going to fall in love with their stories and their lessons.
Well, I think the word in there that always did it for me, which is what I was seeking to provide through the people I presented, was inspiration.
Yeah.
There's just such a need for it. And inspiration's a powerful thing. Inspiration will, encourage you to do things you didn't know you were capable of doing. Or inspiration is to look at, any of these people, Jackie McCormick, Derek Sparks, the whole list of people. When you meet them through the 3P champions, some of you are going to say, wow, if he can do that, she can do that, I can do this. And that is really what we'd like to help bring about. Inspiration is powerful. And, a lot of the people who are going to listen to this or watch it on YouTube are parents.
Yes.
And we want to help parents by presenting people who are parents. And, there are some of these guys, Coach Tommy and a lot of them, who have their own kids, but spend their life coaching other kids and their families. But it's there's this bond of, coaching, teaching, mentoring, just for the sake of doing it. Tim Manson, all these people, they may not mean anything to you listeners now, but after you meet them through the 3P champs, you're going to know who they are. And I think you'll appreciate and respect them as much as Greg and I do. I didn't know who any of them were either, except for a few. But now I'll never forget them. They've all changed my life just by reaffirming the fact that human beings do care about each other. They do want to help each other. And young people are the future. It sounds like a cliche, but that's what it is. If If any parents out there, your most important job is raising your kids well to be happy, productive, giving. And I think this is going to end up being part of our contribution to that effort, is presenting these 3P champions.
That's right. It's the 3Ps, and then they are our 3P champions. You know, the power of mentorship. You know, we talk about all the time. Everybody should have a mentor for everything in their life. And this whole list, everyone had somebody that, like you said, with John, with me, had an impact where that person felt like they believed in themselves because they looked up to that person to give them that inspiration, and it could have changed the course of their life. But if there's one theme I get out of this, other than their makeup, passion, purpose, and principle, is mentorship, giving back, and then character.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
I felt like I learned a lot there, and I know if I'm learning, that anybody who listens to this is going to learn.
and you know, mentorship, teaching, coaching, it's all kind of the same thing, but a lot of these people have been coaches, literally coaches on the sideline, on the court. And the thing about them is each of them was exemplary as a player. And as a coach, I think they all understand that winning is not the ultimate goal. Obviously, everybody who plays and coaches would like to win. But these coaches understand that you're coaching a whole person, an individual with feelings, sometimes with other stuff going on in their life. And in virtually every conversation we had, the subject of empathy came up. And we talked about the role that empathy plays in coaching. And if you're not an empathetic coach, you're not a coach in my book. But in virtually every one of these situations, whether they were, you know, basketball, football, baseball coaches, or musicians, music teachers, as many of them were, doctors, Doc Kelly was on it. He's a teacher, he's a giver. They're all in it for the greater good. They're all in it to help young people become positive adults.
I don't know what else there could be said, Rob.
No, I mean, I think we can tell everybody that our first interview is going to be with Derek Sparks, who was a sensational football player, was taken advantage of to some extent in his career, and ended up writing a book about it, the lessons of the game, and grew up in tough circumstances with his mom, and is one of the most remarkable people I have ever had the honor to meet and speak with. So thanks for tuning in today and letting Greg and I, talk a little about how the 3Ps came about. I think meeting Greg is one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me. It's hard to remember when we weren't friends. It's kind of like we grew up together, but we didn't. So, there are lessons in there. Stay open to life's experiences. It can happen at any time. But we are really, really excited to be hosting the 3P Champs. We're excited to present Derek Sparks, and then a whole slew of people that anybody who tunes in will benefit from getting to see and listen to.
Rob, love you. Thank God you flew out there that 2012 trip to Vegas. And really, it's one of the most exciting projects I've ever been on, meaningful projects. So it's been a pleasure to do the 3Ps with you. Looking forward to others seeing this and hearing this. And thank you, brother.
Well, we've always agreed that everything happens for a reason. So none of it was accidental, and all of it was meant to be. And I love you too, man. You're the greatest. So we'll talk again soon. Thank you, everybody. Right on, brother.
All right, Robbo.
Peace.
Peace.
Stern and Stoller. Let's go.